Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, MMR.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. Hope you'll come back often and tell your friends about us. Before I forget, I do want to encourage you to go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe to it. That'll get you all of the login links necessary to join us live on our future Zoom shows. And if you'll subscribe to our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling, then you'll get all of the advance notice of the shows that we only do that are recorded on YouTube. So some of our shows you can watch live on Zoom. Others you can only watch live if you're on our YouTube channel. And that's why it's important to keep track of what we're doing if you subscribe to both of them. While you're on our website, please check out our scholarship program for next year. And please consider a donation to it if you possibly can. Well, before I go any further, I want to introduce Father Ron Walters for our evening prayer.
Creator of the world, as modelers and makers, we recognize the intricacy and the beauty of our world. We thank you for the vision and the artistry you have given us. Continue to bless us with your creative spirit. Amen.
And while a few minutes ago I mentioned the possibility of your donation for our upcoming scholarship program, I also want to make sure that everybody knows that on our show, August the 30th, we'll be introducing and you'll be able to meet and talk with the winner of our first year of our scholarship program. And if you have the time to join us that evening, I really think that you're going to enjoy meeting the recipient of the scholarship funds, because frankly, without your help, it wouldn't have been possible for this program to be successful. And we want you all to enjoy it as much as that we are going to. Also next week, we have our My Build part of our shows. Chris Course is the host for this. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jim. If you will all recall, we have a My Build challenge next week, which is the August challenge of harvest. So anything that you could bring to the show that is harvest related, such as barns, farm equipment, even going as far as food related billboard cars, that sort of thing. Please send those to me in an email, railrunner130@hotmail.com, and we'll be sure to put your entry in there, and we'll show your photos and give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about it. And also, we have 7 people signed up so far, but we're always waiting for more. So if you have, it's not too late to contribute. So please do so, and we'll be sure to get those on. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jim.
Well, before you go, I got to ask you, how's the tugboat barge project going?
The barge itself, the whole thing, both boats and the car are done. I've done the production cuts for most of it. I've got most of the details together. The hard part is the uphill battle is instructions. So I think I've already got those started, but I'll have to go back and make sure that I wasn't on something when I did them. I found some instructions and I was like, what? Did I actually write this? So that was for a different kit, but I'll go back through and make sure that everything's good before I send it out. But
I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to seeing that. When you get the production model finished, you ought to show it on one of the My Builds, because it's really going to be an unusual model I think most people have never seen before.
Yeah, I do have the pilot models done. If you want to hang on a second here, I'll see if I can grab them.
All right.
Grab the photos real quick here. Let's see. Which boat? There it is. And you had talked a while back about AI.
Yes.
My brother, actually, I sent him photos because I was in a situation where I couldn't make much out of it. And I'm going to show you an AI photo here that basically what he did, that's the original. You see how you can see the ends on both sides there?
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can go forward a few. Yep, look what he did with it.
Huh.
Went from that photo to that one.
Unbelievable.
So he got his program, I think he's using Adobe Illustrator, the latest version of it. He went in and was able to add the wall on both ends and kind of expand it out a little bit.
I'll be darned. Well, I'll tell you, it's really an unusual looking model. It really is.
Yeah, thanks. It's going to be a series of, well, it's three models in one kit.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, looking forward to seeing it when you get it ready and get your instructions written.
Yeah. All righty. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Chris. Now, coming up on August the 17th, which is tomorrow, we're doing our modeling lifestyle with Ben Poole. And Ben, if you've never met Ben, Ben's an OM30 modeler. And his scenes that he creates are just, it's just outstanding material. It really is great modeling. So if you get a chance tomorrow, it starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can only view it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling. But I hope you'll be able to join us. Here's a video.
Join the modeling lifestyle at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on August 17th, where we will feature the modeling lifestyle of Ben Poole. Ben models in ON30 and creates amazing scenes that tell stories in miniature. Join Jim Kello, Ben and his friends as they discuss how modeling has been a major part of Ian's life.
So I do hope you'll be able to join us tomorrow night. Well, let's start the show here. And the first person that I want to introduce you to is Phil Edholm, who you've met before, who's going to be talking about local clubs and NMRA divisions. So Phil, welcome.
Oh, well, thanks, Jim. Well, guys, I'm actually going to take advantage tonight of the fact that I get the podium. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make a sales pitch to you. And I'm going to tell you that rather than going to Southern California next summer, you should come to Northern California. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the convention we're going to run here in Silicon Valley and why I think, if you've ever thought about coming out this way, this is a great opportunity, both from a, model railroading perspective, but also just generally. So what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about what we're doing and kind of what the convention is and where we're going. So the convention is called the Tech Line. We're kind of reflecting on that. This is kind of the confluence of model railroading and technology and art in one place. So this will be in April next year. Really nice time in the Bay Area. We're getting to the point where there's not really much more rain, but it hasn't gotten really warm yet. It'll actually be at the Sonesta San Jose Hotel, which is kind of right in the middle of the Silicon Valley Golden Triangle. If you look on the map, it's kind of right where the red star is. The beauty of this is there's just an amazing set of both prototype opportunities, but also layouts to go see in the area. What's really exciting is we were able to get a $139 room rate, which in this area, most of the hotels are well over $200 a night. You go into San Francisco, they're $300 a night. So with no parking or other fees, so it's going to be very reasonable. And one of the things we did, because we really thought this was an opportunity for people to come from out of town and come to this area, we've gotten it available from basically Friday night before the convention to Tuesday night, the Friday night, the week before the convention. Convention starts on Wednesday night, so it'll be the weekend before through the convention into the next Tuesday. So it's an opportunity to come out and spend a few extra days and kind of see what's in the Bay Area. One of the things we're doing is we're actually doing this much like the narrow gauge convention does this. It's actually, I think, becoming a very popular way to run a convention. So every day what we'll have is clinics in the morning, and we're talking about some great clinicians, clinics in the evening, and then from basically noon to about 6:30 every day will be open. And the nice thing about this is you're actually going to layouts and touring layouts where you're driving in the light. You're not dealing with nearly as much congestion traffic. It also turns out that where we're located, the place we're located is actually right in the middle of the office and manufacturing area of Silicon Valley. So it's a place people drive to in the morning and they drive home from at night. So the idea of driving out at noon when the roads are basically empty and then driving back is almost always counter commute. So it works out really well in terms of being able to to see a number of different things. One of the things that we're going to have some pretty amazing layout tours. I'll put some of these up here. If you're a narrow gauger, you know Dave Adams. If you're into operations, you know who Seth Newman is. His UP Oakland sub is kind of one of those prototypes of building a true prototype layout. Ed Lasso is an S-scale layout. But beyond that, we also have some pretty interesting, what I'll call, for lack of a better word, legacies. If you know who Bob Brown is, Bob Brown has been the only editor of the Narrow Gauge Gazette for 50 years. Bob has a building that's a 2-story building on his property. The downstairs was his office where they did the production of the Gazette for years. The upstairs is his layout room. The downstairs clear is no longer the production facility because that's moved over to White River. But when you go visit Bob, what you realize is that you're basically looking at about 20 or 30% of the models that were ever in the Gazette. It's really like just looking at the Gazette and walking around. Pretty amazing visit. One of the other layouts we'll have open is Jack Burgess. Jack Burgess, if you don't know who Jack Burgess is, Jack was one of the folks that's probably credited with being very early double deck layouts, but he's also probably one of the first modelers to say, I'm going to model a specific railroad on a specific date in history. So he models the Yosemite Valley Railroad, model, I think it's August 8, 1939, something like that. Don't quote me on that being the exact date. He's actually written books about the Yosemite Valley, history books, and his modeling, he's modeled every structure, every car, every engine, every maintenance away car. And most of the models have models of the people that lived in the building or were there that day. And one of the things that's very interesting, Jim, you asked the question, when do you know that your model's finished? If you ask, Jack, and you say, what are you doing? He will tell you the model railroad's finished. There's nothing more to do on it. It is an exact and perfect representation of the Yosemite Valley at that point in time. The thing that I want to say, if you have an interest in seeing these things, they haven't been open for 8 years. The last time we had a regional convention in this area was back pre-COVID, so 8 years ago. Bob's 90, and Jack has had some health problems. Dave Adams, you saw amazing ON3 layout. You go forward 4 years, my gut feel is some of these layouts will no longer be there. We lost during COVID Jim Vale's layout. It was taken out, lost some other layouts. So great opportunity to see things. We're going to have some really great clinics. We have some just amazing modelers and amazing clinics. And a lot of the people that you know and have read about in magazines that are out here will be there for clinics. We're also going to be doing operating sessions. So we're working with Seth and the OpSig folks to set up operating sessions at some amazing layouts. And what we're doing is every day there'll be options for what we're calling casual, focused, and intense. So, a casual would be something fairly basic, where if you wanted to get into a fairly heavy duty timetable and train order, would be a very intense operating session. So, and there'll also be operating sessions both before and after the convention. We're doing a number of prototype tours. The one that'll be exciting is we have a place out here called Ardenwood Farms. Ardenwood Farms is the home to the Carter Brothers Preservation Society. The Carter Brothers were basically call it for lack of a better word, early narrow gauge kit manufacturers. So back in the day, if you had a farming community up a valley somewhere, you wanted to put in a railroad because it was the best way to get your products to market in 1870, 1880. And if the valley next to you did a railroad, you wanted to do one. So what the Carter brothers were doing, they basically built packaged railroads. They would ship all the parts and they would build the cars and build the railroad on site for you and literally build your railroad in place. They actually built the South Pacific Coast, which was the railroad that ran from Oakland down to Santa Cruz, probably one of the more famous narrow gauge railroads in California. The Preservation Society is actually preserving a lot of the cars and vehicles, and we'll actually be going there and spending the day with them and going through how they actually do preservation, how they put in rails. It'll be a very interesting day about really some real railroading experiences. The other one we have is Niles Canyon. We're going to be going there and doing, again, some very interesting experiences. Not very great interest for here, but if you're coming out and want to bringing a spouse with, we'll have some very interesting non-rail activities as well. And we have lots of opportunities in terms of vendor spaces and modules. We've got a great hotel with a great convention facility that we're taking the whole convention facility. The good news is we got a $139 room rate. We have a slightly higher fare on this than usual, a little bit higher. Quite frankly, food prices have just gone through the roof. I don't know if other regions are experiencing that, but our hotel serving prices have gone through the roof. So I'll kind of close with, I always like Dave Letterman and his Karnak 10 reasons. So put up 10 reasons to come out here. So if you're looking to get out of town next year in April and want to go somewhere interesting, a trip out to the Bay Area, then a trip either up to the Sierras or down the coast, an excellent opportunity. So I'll put a link to the website up in the chat. And if anyone's interested, ping me and talk to me about it. But like I said, I think it's a great opportunity to come out and see some great model railroading and visit an area that, quite frankly, is a pretty neat area to visit. If there are any questions, I'll take any questions or I'll throw it back to Jim.
Phil, let me ask you about the room rate. You say there's no parking. Does that mean no parking?
No,
fee?
there's no parking fee. There's no charge for parking.
Okay, but there's plenty of parking around.
There's plenty of parking, but there's no charge. I mean, so like at the NMRA convention, it's $22 a night to park your car.
Yeah.
No, it's free parking here because it should have said free parking. The other thing about the hotel, by the way, it's very interesting, kind of a side note, is it's built next to a shopping center that is an Asian food shopping center that basically services all of the Asian members of our high-tech community in the area. And so if you have any interest in any kind of Asian food, it's within walking distance.
Which airport would you fly into?
You can either fly into San Jose is the closest. San Jose is about 4 miles away.
Okay.
San Francisco is about 30 miles away.
Okay.
So those are the two. San Jose is best. San Francisco is pretty much equally close. And, and we have train service. You can actually, fairly close to where the hotel is, you can get on we have a valley transit system that runs basically a trolley system that runs over to the trains that run on the peninsula. So you can either go that way to San Francisco or go with BART, our Bay Area Rapid Transit, to San Francisco. So there is actually public transit access all the way up to the city. Anyway, yes, Jim?
Anybody have any more questions for Phil?
Cool. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the opportunity. I'll throw it back to you.
Well, listen, let me ask you one thing. Next time you see Jack, see if he's interested to be on our modeling lifestyle, because we sure ought to try to do that before it's not possible anymore.
Yep. Well, I actually have talked to him about it. We were talking about doing it later in the year.
Gotcha. Thanks so much, Phil.
Thanks.
Now I want to turn to Bob Davidson for his dollar store treasures. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. We'll get this right underway here. And welcome to Dollar Store Treasures, where you'll never know what you're going to find down the aisle. And as always, everything you see tonight came from the Dollar Tree store in my neighborhood. There are certainly other dollar stores out there, and I recommend you go prowling. One of the things we talked about last week is that they're always updating their inventory, because basically they're all closeouts. So it pays to go back occasionally. So tonight we're going to start in the hardware aisle. And I happen to find for $1.25, just some real inexpensive. Granted, they're not really high quality, but you do get a reverse grab tweezer here. The flat one is good. These are, I use these when I'm spray painting something and I just need to hold on to it. And I really don't care, about damaging a good pair of tweezers. So again, $1.25, not so bad. So I also found this a couple weeks ago, a little toolbox. It's about 12 inches wide, about 4.5 inches tall, and 5 inches deep. And what I did was I put foam into it, and I'm not just showing you the inside here. It's just open. That's the recess, because the handle folds flat. But if you need to carry a model, I do some painting in my shop when I'm spraying in my business's shop. Or if you're just toting around, a throttle or something like that, you need to bring some stuff around. Again, for $1.25, it's a nice cheap way to cart your wares across town. Next, we'll head down the craft aisle for something. I found this, they call it an embossing tool, but really it's a burnisher. It's a round end. You can see there's a larger ball on the top and a small ball on the bottom. And they're good for burnishing decals or burnishing other appliques that you're putting down if you need to get into a tight corner. It's very comfortable. It's a kind of rubber handle to it, and just a nice little tool, again, for $1. And finally, here's a new aisle that we're going to tonight, down the pet aisle. I was there just today, actually, and I saw this collapsible travel ball. And I said, there's times I'm working over, I just need something to put stuff into. And I don't happen to have a container around. Well, this is one of those little collapsible rubber things, and it unfolds and makes a nice little bowl. If you've got loose parts around, you're working, leaning over the layout or something, and you just need to put things into something. It's real good. It's soft. It won't damage anything. And again, for $1, you really can't go bad. So again, I encourage everybody, visit your local dollar store. You'll never know what you find. So that's it for me tonight. Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
Anybody have any questions for Bob? Well, Bob, thanks so very much. I mean, the goodies that you're showing for $1, can't beat it. Cannot.
No, I'm still going broke. I'm buying 5 or 6 of them every week. So.
All right. Next, we were supposed to get Mark Poggendorf here to talk about hobby shops with an owner, but the owner suggested it would be better for him to do it next week. So we're going to postpone that for a week. But Mark will be here with a hobby shop owner for our next week's show. So let me go now to Gary Sherrill, MMR. Gary, if you remember, is building a machine shop. So Gary, welcome.
Thanks very much, Jim. Okay, let's share screen. Okay. Okay. Sorry, folks. This was supposed to kick into phase 3, but obviously it didn't. I apologize. Phase 3. Okay, we're going to finish the interior and we're going to finish the exterior walls. So what I've done is I've got the building all squared up. I've, as you can see, all the joints are hidden and everything is carved in so that everything blends together. I've got myself a little glass palette. And what I've done is I put out a dab of, these are all fairly inexpensive acrylic paints, dark sienna, some orange, and some red, dark red. So what I do is I take a little sponge and I then dab the different colors into my colors, and I start dabbing the brick all the way around. Now, the idea here is not to completely paint. All you want to be doing is dabbing. So you're going to dab all the walls all the way around the outside of this building. And then you're going to go over to another color and continue adding the browns, the oranges, as you go along and mixing. And eventually what's going to happen, you do enough dabbing, you're going to completely fill in these walls. So as you can see, there's different colors. The 3 colors are blending and you're getting a variation in the brick. And again, here you see little oranges and browns and etc. And then we come again around, fully coloring all the walls. And then what I do is I take underline shale and I brush the shale and sort of blend it in. You don't want to put it on heavy, put it on light, and just keep brushing it. So basically what you're doing is you're taking all the colors you put on that brickwork and you're starting to blend everything in. And as you go along, it'll all start to blend in and you'll get a darker variation and also color variation in the brickwork. What I've also done is the interior. I've got some gray, and I completely painted the top walls and inside walls this dark gray. Now, on the outside trim, around the windows, along the edges, I have taken antique cement color and then gone around all those to fill in all the cement that is around. And I used aged concrete for that. Then we go to the next one and I do my brick colors. This is a 1 to 5. I have a system where I have a number of acrylic colors, 1 to 5, and I start painting my rocks, starting with number 1 all the way around. Then I go to 2, 3, 4, until everything is filled in. And then again, I take the 100 line shale and I blend or mix it, paint it on with a paintbrush. And what that does is it blends and tones down the rock colors, and they all blend into a nice rock foundation form. Now, for the interior, I wanted the wainscoting walls. So, of course, I measured out on the inside and cut out the window openings. And then they were then placed inside the building after the floor was put in. And you can see that they're put in and glued to the side of the insides of the walls. And then a cap was put on all the way around the top of the wainscoting. And here's another with the doors painted up and just showing the interior. You can see this is all finished. There is a piece that is put in here, and this is all done so it looks nice and neat. And looking at the side, so we now have the walls completely painted, the concrete around the interior walls, and the wainscoting and flooring put in the building. Now I added the doors. They're all put in and they were painted a dark green color. You can see the brick blending here and the stone blending here. The wall has a light, or the floor and the wing coating has a light stain put on it. And that is the end of phase 3. Phase 4, we're going to finish the windows and complete the roof in the next segment. So that brings the building up to phase 4, Jim. Any questions?
Let me ask you a question. When you talk about blending all the colors by painting on the stain, is that, when you say painted on, I mean, is this thick painted on or kind of dry brush painted on? How do you do that?
At the beginning, photograph that I showed at the beginning, where are we? Sorry, going the wrong way. Yeah, you can see what I've done here is I've taken the sponge and I've dabbed this.
Right.
So this is one color. And I've taken another color and you blend it in with a little bit of the brown, and then it gets dabbed again. So that's going to fill in more. And then you keep doing that with the 3 colors. And what you basically get is you get this reddish, orange, brown brickwork. So
now, when you put the stain on, you said you brush the stain on it to blend all the colors.
Yeah. So we're going to go down to the shale, which is the stain. So what I do is I just dip that in the brush. You don't want to use a lot of it. You want it just a very little bit. And that is brushed over the existing walls. And what will happen is the more you brush it, the more it's going to blend in and take that the colors that are underneath, and it starts to blend everything. So all you're doing is very lightly, not heavily, very lightly brushing these walls with this shale stain. And then what'll happen is you can see here it started to dry and you get a darker grayish type of finish. And it also, depending on how the light hits this building, you'll get this different shading effect. You'll get like graying, you'll get a little bit of orange, red. So this all blends. What I was trying to do, this is the second building of this series. And I'm trying to match it to the original first one I did. And the third one that will be coming up, it's going to be done the same way. So all these 3 buildings, when you look at them at the layout, they pretty well match each other. Gotcha. So they're just to give the idea that they were roughly built along the same time period.
Anybody else have any questions for Gary?
Yeah, Gary, this is Greg. It's not a question, but a thank you. I have some of that Hunterline shale, and I have not used very much of it. It's not like their normal stains. It's more like a stain with paint. And I haven't found many uses for it. And you've just opened up my eyes to a whole lot more where I can use it. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, this stain that you see here in the brick, it hasn't been used on the stone. Now the stone is quite graphic, but when you put this stain on it, it just magically transforms it into a really nice finish. there it is there. And
Yep.
it dullens down the brick. And to me, it makes it more authentic. Because you don't see brick that color, like, I'm sorry, you don't see brick dark, well, you do on some buildings. But the majority of the buildings I've seen with stone, it's more dulled down. So here's a little, you can see color here, a little darker here, and it just blends everything together.
I think it's getting gorgeous. I really do. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All
Gary,
right.
Gary,
Yes.
Steve Sherrill, I have a question.
Sure.
I don't see any mortar in the bricks. Is that something that you're going to add at another phase, or, you know, I see very few bricks that you don't see the mortar somewhere.
Yeah, this building is the graying or the blending. That helps a little bit with the mortar. I don't do a whitewash mortar on my buildings.
Okay.
I just find that the system I use here, I've used for a long period of time, and I like it better in the application that it's on. I find it better than like other applications. I've used the white mortar, but here it isn't. Now if that's the way you wanted to do yours, then you know you could go ahead and do that, but I would do it before you do the stain.
Yeah, I usually put the mortar, you know, even if it's light mortar,
Right,
put it on. It just gives a more contrasting thing, I think.
right.
It's very
Gary,
nice.
Thanks so very much, Gary.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Jim.
Yes, sir. Well, now let's turn to Tom Farrell, who is scratch building his layout, but he's become more of a shipbuilder than a model railroader. Tom, welcome.
I think you're muted, Tom.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
You're
Okay.
all set, Tom.
You're okay.
Okay. Now, what? Hold on. Okay, we all set? Everybody hear me?
Yep.
All right, let's start all over. Yes, I'm now an accomplished shipbuilder per Jim. This evening, I will be doing a rusted hull resin kit. And then I will be doing a resin pour for the Salt Creek River Basin. So on with the shipbuilding. This will be the finished scene that I will show you how I did this evening. This is the resin pour, and this is the rusted hull that is in the water, in the resin. So let's show you how I did this today. And there's that dam that I built in a previous show. So this resin hull, this
is Mr. Tom Farrell, who's going to be showing.
this this resin hull is a Frenchman River Model Works ship, and it can be used for multi-scales. It I of course am modeling an O scale, ON30. This is the actual how the model comes. It's a single resin casting. It's unpainted. It's very high detail. You can see on the surface here, this rust surfaces, and this thing's approximately 11 inches long.
and 2 7/8 inches wide and about 1.5 inches, 1 5/8 high. And like I said, with the previous resin ship model, the art with these resin kits is in the painting of them. So that's the length of the original casting. Now, I thought that was a little large for where I'm putting my model, so I removed 2 inches out of the center of this. I cut this out with a razor saw and made it 9 inches in length, which was more suitable to the area on my Salt River basin. And I basically just super glued it together. And I'll show you, I go back and I fill this with putty, but this is shown here primed, but before I painted it with Rust-Oleum automotive primer, I washed it with dish soap in case there was any mold release on it. Again, I couldn't detect any, but it's just good practice with these resin kits to wash them up with a detergent. And then you want to prime them because primer gives you a nice non-reflective surface, a nice surface to put your actual color on. Otherwise, you may not get an even color. So what I did to achieve the rust color, this is the base coat. Some of you may recall I used this on a design preservations model a couple months back. This is a 2-part process that's this, I'll call it obnoxious orange here, as comes out of the rattle can. And then there's this acrylic, like a purplish rust color. You'll see how it provides for a very nice base coat. Regarding filling that crack, I just used this Squadron white putty. I just filled it sloppily because I'm going to paint right over it. So this is the paint team for the rusted hull. These are the same colors I used on my ship from the previous week. Just a very dark rust, and then moving left to right, light rusts, an orange, and then this Vallejo wash. And makes for a very nice rusted effect. See the detail, the bubbly rust on this. This is all by French River Model Works, James Cleveland. He's really nice models here in resin, and he's the fellow that, in addition to ship kits, he has the Tom York quote historic line. So really, I just took the kit as is, cut 2 inches out of it, glued it together, filled the gap here, and painted it in preparation for placing it in my river. So next, another type of resin, which is technically an epoxy for the Salt Creek River Basin. And I used 3 different layers. This was prior to any painting or any resin pours. Gary and Greg mentioned the Hunterline shale. That's what I use to color this stone, as you'll see, is that Hunterline shale, because it's not really a wash. It's like a paint. And this here, this is this green undercoat. It's really a liquid pigment. It's not really a paint. And the Woodland Scenics, the first layer that I use, cautions that if you use their own product, their liquid pigment, their green undercoat, their 2-part epoxy will could bring the color up into the epoxy. So what I did is I glazed it with this, basically it's a matte medium, this glazing material, and I sealed this off before I painted it. So I took these artist colors, Hooker's green and Payne's gray. And the idea was to create the illusion of depth. So I moved from light to dark. So I started with a base color of this Hooker's green, and I thinned it with water and just a heavy paintbrush. And then I blended this Payne's gray into it because I wanted the center channel to appear as though it had some depth to it. And the best way to do that is to do it with a dark color in the absence of light. I had an art teacher way back in high school tell me, don't use black for your darks. Use these grays. They're warmer colors, and in nature, rarely do you see black. So heeding his advice from way back in 1978, I used this Payne's gray. You can see how I blended this in here. There's goes from light to dark, trying to show that there's a ship channel here. I have finished this to a flat black, the edge of the layout here. So this is the general effect here. So you can see how it goes from light to dark. These buildings are now glued in place. These are the 3 bait shops. I use this tacky glue to glue them in place. I did a quick check around the perimeter of the scenery and the front edge to make sure there was no visible cracks. There was a little crack here at this bridge abutment, and there was a little crack on the fascia. I filled the fascia crack with super glue, and I filled this with this tacky glue, and I let it dry. The worst thing when you're working with these resins is they're very viscous. You don't want to wind up with resin moving from your riverbed to your floor of your train room. I'm pleased to report I didn't have any leaks. There's a better close-up of the painting. See the light to dark, and this is that mixture of the Payne's gray and the Hooker's green. I just placed my other ship in there for just to see how the whole thing would look. There's an ensemble of things that will be in the water. There's that rusted ship hull. There's the fishing boat. There's the 3 in the water bait and tackle shops. Now, my first pour, I used this Woodland Scenics murky water. It has a resin, and then it has this activator, which is a hardener. So basically, it's a 2-part epoxy. I wanted to use this murky color because I wanted to take a little of the edge off of that quote painting that I did. It was somewhat of a gamble because I didn't know how it would look. They recommend that you place the resin and the hardener in warm water for, I think, roughly 10 minutes to warm enough that you could put your hand in there, but not so hot that you couldn't. That was in the instructions. So I heeded their advice. These are these epoxies, when they're mixed properly, create heat. They have a reaction with one another. Endothermic reaction is the technical word. And there's the first pour of the murky water. And you can see even there, we're getting these nice reflections as if it were really water. And the ship hull, I poured some on the inside of it at the same approximate level as the outside. So this was the first pour, and then I let it dry overnight. And then switching gears, I went to this, it's called Famo wood, I guess. I got it at Lowe's. It's made for countertops, basically. So the reason I went after this is I wanted something very hard. I figured if it was hard enough for a bar, it'd be hard enough for a river and protected from my future grandson's fingers. So, and it too has a resin and a hardener, and they recommend only pouring 1/8 of an inch thick. I ignored that, and these resins are very messy. So I put out a piece of newsprint worked on my workbench, and this is a disposable container. You put this one, I didn't warm anything up, didn't call for it, probably wouldn't hurt, but I poured the entire bottle of resin in there. Then I poured the hardener in there, and then I took a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch basswood. I needed a stick to stir it with. And they recommend you stir it for 6 minutes thoroughly without creating too many bubbles. And then they want you to pour it into a fresh container, a virgin container, and stir it another 6 minutes. Well, I complied. I got a second container and poured this container into another container and stirred it for an additional 6 minutes. 6 minutes or 90, or till it reaches 90 degrees, they said. Well, I had no way of measuring that, so I just did 6 and 6. Then I did my second pour. I poured it basically, I split the first half of the container to about this line right here, right in here. And I poured in and around the dam, and then just poured it all around, poured a little bit more in here. I took a disposable paintbrush and I pushed it into the corners of the dam and around the this rock work. There's that Hunterline shale color. There it is, weathered. There it is, non-weathered. And then I poured the balance, or the other 50%, downriver. And with my paintbrush, I pushed it underneath these structures. And then I waited another day, and it was absolutely rock hard. And then I did the third pour or depth coat. And I'd say it's roughly a 1/2 inch thick of epoxy. And I checked it at the start of I poured this morning, this third pour, and it's already nearly dry to the touch, just slightly tacky. So I'm figuring by tomorrow morning it will be glass-like hard. And it really looks pretty nice. There's 3 layers, and it does have the illusion of a real depth here because of that Payne's gray and Hooker's green that I favored the Payne's gray in the middle of the layout. So here's looking a little downriver. I mean, here's a nice little reflection I called out. Now I'll go back and this epoxies, they wick up things, they wick onto the shore, they wick up these dowel rods, these piers. I'll go back and paint these like an algae, and I'll put barnacles or something on here. But that's after it dries. And it really looks pretty nice. It's a nice materials. And that's it, folks. Any questions this evening?
That's impressive. It really is impressive. I know it had to be a lot of work, but
it's making quite an impact. This is one of the first areas you see when you walk into the layout room, and I wanted it to have some impact. So I think this shanty town and this river and the covered bridge will hit you pretty good.
yeah. Derek, the boat that you put in is a nice touch too.
Yeah, and I intend to once everything's dry, I'm going to have a collapsed. I'm not going to just leave it the way it is. I'm going to put in a collapsed deck and some bulkheads and some doors and stuff. I'm not just going to have it like that as my scheme. Yeah. I don't need to do anything now, but at some point, that's my idea.
Yeah. Anybody have any more questions for Tom?
Tom, the reflection in the water is fabulous.
It really is.
And that was a happy accident when I was taking the photos, and I had to take these photos with the overhead lights off because when you I had to turn all the lights off and just use natural light from the windows because you were seeing these big LED lights in the river. So, but then I saw these reflections. I thought, how cool, you know. So,
Tom, would you use this again? I mean, would you make this same scene with the same product again?
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change anything. I like the idea of the murky water to basically neutral out my river basin painting a little bit. You know, it sort of puts it back a couple stages and puts like a little mud in the water, if you will. And these materials are relatively expensive, but there's really no way out around that, I suppose. It's about $75 in that river. I mean, that's not insane, but that's about where I am with it. When I do put that fishing boat in, which will be right about in here, I will use Mod Podge to basically place it into the water so that it'll have some little wake around it, as if the river's going out around the ship. That'll be another at the moment I'm super detailing this particular bait shop, and in the morning I plan on putting that ship in here, and that'll be next week's show, is what I'm doing with this building, the ship, and as far along. Each one of these are going to be super detailed on the way down. They're just very rough right now. In fact, this one doesn't have any weathering on it at all. So that'll be the next show anyway. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. It looks great.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, now I want to turn to Steve Sherrill for his series. What do you want to talk about? So, Steve, what do you want to talk about? Steve, are you muted?
I unmuted.
I just unmuted him.
Oh, okay.
So I want to show you my entire fleet of boats. If I can find it on here. There it is, and that's me waiting to build the next one. So Tom, if you need that, let me know and I'll send it to you.
All right.
Tonight I want to talk about etiquette in visiting layouts. And I need some input from the other people who were on the site tonight. I know when I go to people's layouts, I see other visitors touching motive power, touching cars, laying stuff on layouts. And I would like to know what other modelers are doing about that and how they control that situation. I find it kind of upsetting. That other people take advantage of this type of thing. Especially it seems to be prevalent in the smaller scales, the HO, the N, and not so much in the O scale. Have other people found this to be a problem that they've noticed when they're visiting layouts or operating? Operating, I see it happen a lot when the uncoupling occurs on the trains. I know that some of the models that we've built are, contest quality and they're kind of fragile. And I see no need for this type of action to happen. Things like, again, putting drinks on the layout, leaning against the layouts, pushing against the fascia. You as a visitor, these things should not occur, I feel. Do other people have this same observation, or is it just me? I know that I've kind of been brought up in model railroading where you didn't touch anybody else's equipment without their permission. And I've seen some pretty bad things happen, especially when it comes to picking up locomotives and cars. I mean, I've seen people pick them up and just kind of squeeze them. You know, so if I can get some input on this and how we can convey certain behaviors to visitors without, you know, being nasty to them. And we always want to welcome them back. But I do believe that there should be some rules that we kind of enforce. And I find that the adults are worse than the children. No,
I got to agree with you because I used to have my layout open. I don't anymore. Or, you know, it's very rare that I'll invite somebody over. But I used to. And the thing that griped me more than anything else were the people that had to lean against it. And they weren't just leaning against the side of it. It seemed like they just felt like they had to put their hand on it somehow.
yeah.
And that to me was frustrating. And how you stop that, lots of luck.
Well, I don't know, you know, if you're having something like a division meet or a visit from the division, maybe you could put something in the notes to please, you know, don't handle the equipment. You know, no drinks or anything on the layout, this type of thing. I mean, I don't want to run around and, you know, watch everybody all the time. I mean, you know, we're adults and I feel that, you know, we worked hard for our layouts. So, I mean, I get somebody like Martin who does a lot of underbody detail and a lot of detail work. Well, somebody, you know, all of a sudden wants to take a look. What are they going to do? They're going to bend the wiring underneath, or worse than that, punch the windows out, you know, on the sides. I mean, it's a lot of work to repair this stuff. So I just need, you know, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one with a layout on here that has people come and visit.
But what have you tried that worked?
Well, I kind of gently tell them not to lean against the layout, or you know, being battery powered, I don't have to worry much about stuttering for electrical contact. I do use the dental thing to uncouple the cars. It works very good, and things like that. I just try to avoid that. And to be quite honest, I don't, unless it's an open house type of situation, I usually just invite people over here who I know are going to be courteous.
Hey, Steve.
And value my work as much as theirs. So,
Steve,
yes.
just tell everybody to carry a big fly swatter.
Yeah.
I think
You know,
a taser is appropriate.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm sure, you know, after you have, you go to a train show and you have a layout that you've taken there, look how much repair work you have to do. And that's all not just moving the layout itself. Even on the little micros, you have to glue stuff back again, fix the cars, and things like this. But
there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things we did at, you know, I was in N scale from 1967 to 2015, and I still have 2 N-track modules. And we do 2 things at N-track when we go to shows. One, sometimes we'll just rope off a distance between the layout and the N-track module. Or we'll have a temporary flat acrylic plexiglass that we put up on some of the modules that are more detailed. We don't want people touching them. So we'll put a temporary flashing up there that they can't reach in and touch anything.
Yeah, you can't do that on a home layout though.
No, I mean, for a show, you could temporarily.
Yes, but another thing that people who operate your railroad come over and they have a sweater on, which is a loose fitting, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh, that's just asking for trouble. And usually, you know, the layouts that I've been to, they would tell them, I'm sorry, you can't wear a sweater, or, you know, put your jacket over here, you know, they have a hook or something for the jackets. You know, it's just, you know, we worked years for this stuff, and a guy can just damage it in 1 minute.
You just got to give the lecture before they walk through your layout. I had a visitor today on my layout, but my bench work's so robust. You know, that you can lean against it. In fact, that doesn't hurt it at all, but it still could be damaged if somebody reaches their fingers in there and touches something, you know. So I haven't had any.
Well, on my fascia, I've got card boxes. I've got holders for the controllers, old plug-ins. I've got manual switch controls sticking out, you know, this kind of thing. So there's lots of stuff that can be touched. So
I'll tell you, this is Phil. I'll tell you a story. This is a ON30 modular story. So first module I built, wanted this great idea. Modules you run from both sides. So I made the turnout so there was a push button on the fascia with I built a little circuit out of a latching relay so you could push either side and it would throw the turnout.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought it in and everybody in the club said, wow, that was stupid. And of course the public pushed it. So I made up little plastic covers that were clear plexiglass that would hang over it. So you had to move the cover aside to push it. And they moved the cover aside. Then I painted the covers green so they were the same color as the fascia siding. So they were kind of not very visible, but they still pushed them. And I actually had one time, I was standing on one side of the layout running a train up to a turnout. And there was a probably mid-30s woman on the other side. And she was looking at me. She looked down at the switch. She looked up at me, looked down at the switch and pushed the thing aside and throw the turnout. So my engine ran into the switch turnout backwards and derailed. And so what I've done on all the new modules, and I have one of these I'll show on next week in the My Build. Actually just put I used a rabbit to run the tortoises, and you can use just a little simple switch. I actually mounted those in the scenery, those little tiny push button switches. And if you paint them and put them in the scenery, they're pretty much transparent. They're right next to the turnout. So you actually push them in the scenery. What's fun is people don't reach into the scenery very much at a show like that. But yeah, the public, you have to kind of watch them like a hawk. It's especially when they have kids and they get the kids close.
Well, we used to have a designated re-railer. That was a guy who knew how to handle all the custom painted locomotives and cars. He knew how to handle them and put them on, rather than someone unfamiliar with it would be fumbling around with the equipment. And it worked out pretty good. But usually, you know, a lot of good railroads don't have a lot of derailments. And if it is, it's because they failed to throw a switch when it gets a switch or something like that.
Yeah.
One of the things I have on my layout, Steve, are their signs. Very there's quite a number of them. And it says on the sign, "Keep your cotton picking hands off." And I really had no trouble.
I think we've lost
Steve,
your
you're
voice.
breaking up. I don't know what's the matter.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Yeah.
It froze up, Steve.
That's right.
Steve. I can't hear you no more, Chief.
No, I'm afraid
I
we've
think
lost
he's lost
Steve.
his internet, but
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm afraid we've lost him for the evening.
Mm-mm-mm.
Well, I'm sorry that happened, but nothing we can do about it. But I do think that was an interesting subject to talk about, because I think all of us, if we've opened our layouts, it used to be, one of the main problems that we used to have in contests, particularly, was you'd have people come in and want to pick models up, and they weren't judges necessarily. They just wanted to look at the models, and so all of a sudden you'd have people come by and look at the models and start picking them up, and parts would start dropping off and everything else. I don't think that's as much of a problem now as it used to be, but for some of us, that turned out to be a real issue that we had to deal with to try to keep people's hands off the models. Well, that's all we really have for tonight, I'm afraid. I'm sorry that we lost Steve, because I think that was an interesting subject. But he'll be back next week with something else that we can talk about. So thank you all so much for coming. We really do appreciate it. And now let us show you the caboose. And this, we have to give credit to Phil Edholm. He won a prize. Bill, you want to comment about this, particularly the speakers? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so this was actually for the Soundtracks had a thing back, I think it was the 31st July. If you submitted some pictures of the installation of a Soundtracks decoder and a video of the engine, they would give you a free Soundtracks decoder. So by the way, I got a Blue Nami 2002, I think it is, the 2-amp Blue Nami. I'm putting in one of my ON30 engines. So that's actually that's an O-scale Sunset GE locomotive. It's a brass locomotive with the 4-amp decoder. What makes it really interesting is there are actually 4 speakers. There are a little box speaker by, I think it's TMS or something. They're about 1.2 inches by 1.2 inches by about a half an inch, and has a 1.1 inch speaker in it. And they're an enclosed box. And the nice thing about enclosed box speakers is you get much better sound control than just having a speaker out in the air. And there are actually 4 of those in there. There are 2 mounted right behind the cab. They're glued back to back and glued up to the top. So they're actually shooting out through the vents there right behind the cab on the hood. And then in the back, there's actually, again, 2, one shooting up through the air vents and one shooting down. And I don't know if you can hear it as it went by, but it's actually does a great job of actually giving you sound across the engine. And the really thing that's interesting is when you're close to the engine, because obviously an O-scale engine's about, this long. If you're standing this far away, the 2 speakers are like this, and you get essentially a stereophonic effect, so that when the horn plays, it actually sounds like it's coming right from the horn in the middle of the engine. So it came out really well. I'm really proud of. We got 2 of those we're doing for an engine set, and it's actually replicating some engines that I chased through the Feather River Canyon about 6-7 years ago. There was a combination of BNSF engine leading a Union Pacific engine pulling a train through the Feather River Canyon. I've got pictures of the train go over to the Ketty Y, so it's kind of recreating those 2 engines. So I thought that'd be an interesting caboose for tonight. So back to you, Jim.
Well, thanks so much for finding it for us, and to everybody else, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you have a good time. Most importantly, hope you learned something. See you next Wednesday.